100 years after it all began, this is the story of one of sport's greatest governing bodies, the International Swimming Federation, otherwise known as FINA.
Pour moi, c'est vraiment un très grand honneur et un plaisir d'être à la tête de la Fédération internationale à l'occasion du centenaire. C'est pas toujours évident, mais c'est pour moi un plaisir de célébrer cet anniversaire, d'autant que la FINA a connu un parcours particulièrement remarquable, et surtout ces dernières années, et c'est pour cela que nous envisageons avec mes collègues et avec tous les membres de notre organisation de célébrer ce centenaire de manière tout à fait particulière.
« 2008 marks the centenary year of an organization that has always been one of the key players in the success of the Olympic Games. In fact, FINA oversees 5 different sports: swimming, diving, water polo, synchronized swimming, and open water swimming. Right across the globe, FINA brings to the world of sport the world of water. The history of FINA starts in 1908 in London. Brought together by Britain's George Hearn, representatives of 8 countries, from Belgium, Denmark, Sweden, Finland, Hungary, Germany, France and Great Britain, met in the Manchester Hotel to establish the basis of an international federation. The federation was born for 3 reasons: to unify the rules of swimming, diving and water polo, to create and check the list of world records, and to organize the Olympic events. It was in 1908 that swimming created its first sensation. In the Shepherd's Bush Stadium where the Games were held, the British organizers built the first Olympic swimming pool. It was the 4th time that swimming had been part of the Olympic program. The 3rd time for water polo, which was then the only Olympic team sport. And it was the 2nd appearance for diving. It was also in the swimming pool that the Olympic marathon runners cooled off after their race. 1912, and FINA was at the forefront of innovation in world sport, as it would prove in Stockholm. 16 years before track and field athletics, FINA was the first international federation to open its Olympic competitions to women. Sweden created the first separate classification between men and women in competition. Fanny Durack of Australia would win the first women's 100 meters, and FINA registered the first women's record in world sport. The Stockholm Olympics also produced one of the first great champions of world sport. A nobleman from Hawaii, Duke Kahamamoku, was dominant, as he was again in 1920. Antwerp would be the last Olympic city to use a river for the swimming championships. In the 20s, FINA continued to grow with its first executive board in 1924 and its first president, Sweden's Erik Bergvall. He was followed by Ernest Digny of France and later by Harold Fern of Britain. As the workload grew, 4 years later, FINA added the International Water Polo Board and the International Diving Committee to help develop those sports.
I'm looking forward to meeting you all at the Olympic Games. You, your husbands, your children, your sweethearts, your sisters, your brothers, cousins, uncles, aunts, you, well, all of you.
FINA felt at ease in a developing world with all its innovations. 1932, in the new age of cinema sound, the Olympics were no longer silent.
In the true spirit of sportsmanship, for the honor of our country and for the glory of sport.
In the pool in Los Angeles, a new nation was making its mark, Japan. And whatever their country, the swimmers discovered that in the United States, to complement their achievements, there was the interview.
I can't tell you how happy I am to have been able to win this event. For the last 4 years, I've been thinking of nothing but Olympics, and now that it's over, I can hardly believe it's true. Thank you.
In the golden age of cinema, swimming was going through its own golden age. The world was Hollywood crazy. The most successful of the actors to play Tarzan was also the greatest swimmer in the early part of the sport's history. Johnny Weissmuller had won the Olympic 100 meters in 1924 and 1928. And back in 1922, he'd been the first man to swim the distance in under 1 minute. In those pre-war years, and after the 1929 Wall Street crash, America needed cheering up. It even sought to have fun at the Olympic Games with a different kind of sport: synchronized diving. Four years later, in Berlin, the movie maker Leni Riefenstahl covered the Games, bringing a new artistry to water sports. The Americans dominated the swimming pool, together with the Dutch and Japanese. And the United States remained on top in diving, winning every medal. From the 20s onwards, American success was based on the latest equipment and training methods. It was a program which produced champion after champion. The other rising nation was Australia, the host country of the Olympics in 1956. In Melbourne, FINA introduced a new discipline, the butterfly.
Watch the three American girls, particularly man in lane 4, Ramey next to her in 5.
Butterfly developed from the breaststroke, and for a long time, both styles were used in the same competition. But in Melbourne, the butterfly had its own races.
Just ahead of Ramey and a yard clear of Sears at the halfway mark.
At the Games in Melbourne, the Australians really made the world sit up, taking over from Japan as the Americans' great rivals, with swimmers like Murray Rose, John Hendricks, David Thiel, and Lorraine Krapp. But especially Dawn Fraser, who had remained the #1 in swimming until the mid-60s. 40 years after Johnny Weissmuller, Fraser became the first woman to swim the 100 meters in under 1 minute. Over the years, Hungary has established itself as the dominant nation in water polo, with 8 Olympic gold medals. When FINA was founded, there were just 8 member nations. By 1958, for its 50th anniversary, there were 75 national federations. Rome in 1960, and controversy over manual timing after the disputed finish between DeWitt of Australia and Larson of America. The two men were given the same time, but it seemed the American had in fact touched first. To put an end to such uncertainties, FINA introduced sensors at the finish. 8 years on, timing became electronic and could be measured down to 1/100th of a second. That was in Mexico City, where one of the future Olympic legends first stepped into the spotlight. Mark Spitz of the USA. It was in Munich in 1972 that the legend was truly born. Spitz would put together the most extraordinary series of Olympic performances ever witnessed. To add to the 2 he won in Mexico, Spitz won 7 more gold medals, the best Olympic performance ever in any sport. After Munich, Spitz retired at only 22 years of age. As with Shirley Babashoff, Roland Mattis and Shane Gould, there just weren't enough events to drive Spitz on. So FINA made an historic decision. Under the presidency of Javier Ostamora and Harold Henning, in 1973 in Belgrade, FINA held its first World Championships, with competitions in diving, swimming, and water polo. In swimming, East Germany won 10 of the 15 titles at stake. And there was a new discipline, synchronized swimming. With it, FINA brought an artistic quality to its competitions. 11 years later, synchro would make its entry into the Olympic Games at Los Angeles. 1984 was an important date in the history of world sport, and of swimming in particular. China arrived on the international scene, and its divers would soon become the best in the world. China's supremacy began in the women's events, because in the men's competition, one diver was untouchable. He was America's Greg Louganis. Louganis was double world champion in 1982 in Guayaquil and in 1986 in Madrid, and double Olympic champion in 84 and 88. In Seoul, the East German Christine Otto won 6 golds, the best performance ever by a woman. Matt Biondi of the USA also stopped at 6, despite the new 50-meter freestyle event. And in the 100 meters butterfly, Suriname's Anthony Nesty was the first ever black swimmer to win a gold medal. In 1988, more events were introduced under a new FINA president. It was the beginning of the La Fou years. In the new professional world of sport, FINA needed to adapt its structures in order to give its disciplines more exposure. First, FINA set up its headquarters at Lausanne in Switzerland. Secondly, FINA employed an executive director to create a new aquatic sport brand to attract more attention from the media and sponsors. FINA wanted to develop and diversify its sports throughout the world. From now on, World Championships would be held every 2 years. To reach a wider public, FINA promoted its Masters competition, created in 1986 and focused on veteran swimmers. There was the creation of the World Championships in short course swimming in 1993. A new discipline would appear, open water swimming. And in the 90s, synchronized diving arrived once more. The 1-meter board was introduced, as well as World Cups in diving and water polo. What's more, FINA developed women's water polo and junior competitions. One of the keys to success, temporary swimming pools. They appeared in 1991 to make it easier to put on events. Permanent buildings were no longer necessary, and costs were lowered. Those temporary swimming pools made it possible to go anywhere. It helped to increase the number of bidding cities and to put on events in unusual and popular places. Places like Copacabana in Brazil, or an ice rink in Gothenburg. More international events created higher and higher standards of performance and produced new champions. A whole wave of top performances from men and women, thanks to the organization of FINA. To make things even more attractive, FINA has modified the World Championships. They've become an aquatic festival, reflecting the diversity of aquatic sports. The festival idea is extremely useful for host cities because it promotes prestigious sites and helps to draw in the spectators. One example was Melbourne in 2007. The Rod Laver Arena, normally used for Grand Slam tennis, became the world centre of swimming, with all 5 aquatic sports on show. Another winning card, without a doubt, was television. TV rights guaranteed the greater part of FINA's finances and popularized the sport throughout the world. Swimmers became more famous. The growth in broadcasting helped to take swimming to more countries and produce more champions from more countries.
Wow, sweet and cool. When we get together and do our thing.
From the very start, FINA has organized congresses to help explain its policies to its members. And today, FINA is opening new doors, focusing on countries from the developing world. FINA is the central body for 195 national